This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. This is the old Citizen-Net Reporter with the Dean of the White Plains School of Journalism, Jim Benerofe, who has the headlines of the week.
And here are the headlines for the week of April the 5th, 2019. City budget is submitted. There is good news and bad news. 2 PBA officers being investigated for inappropriate conduct involving $250,000 in PBA funds. Kat Bresler files for Democratic primary election, June 25th. City and county recognize Vietnam War dead in joint remembrance at City Hall.
Thank you, Jim. And right now, tonight, we're talking money, your money, on the White Plains Week video newsreel March of Time. The city budget was proposed, came out of City Hall Monday night, and we're going to expose it to, next slide, the sunlight. Yes, sirree, that's what we need, more sunlight on the budget. Exactly. And, of course, here, Jim, is a little bit of a roundup there on the all-important page 7 of the budget, and it points out that the new budget is going to be in total $198.3 million. And what do you think about this?
Well, I think basically that it's got to say the city did a pretty good job. Mm-hmm. There's not a significant increase. It's 2.7%. $4.4 million, or excuse me, $4.8 million. And when you add the water, sewer, library, and self-insurance, it brings the budget up to $198 million, and that's also $4.4 million increase, or 2.3%.
Right. Now, first, here's what goes up. What do you think goes up? Your property taxes by 2.7%. And here's another look. As my story on WPCNR.com points out in detail, you'd want to know how much. Well, here's the tax impact. A new tax rate is $217.07 per $1,000 of valuation, and here's the impact. At a $13,500 assessed home, you're up $77. But as you go up in assessed values, it hits you. If your home is in the $20,500 assessment, you pay $117 more. You're at $44.50 in city taxes, and add your school tax of $13,800, you're pushing $18,000 in taxes. The $16,500 assessed home, you're at $35.81 in city taxes and $11,098 in school taxes, about $14,700 in total taxes between city and school. We await the final school budget adoption on Monday, and hopefully they got some more school aid from Albany. Just a little change, please, Mr. Cuomo. And we will slice and dice a tad on Monday night and get the proposed $672 per $1,000 of assessed value that the school board is planning down a little. The bright side, labor peace. Settlements have been reached, and there is an allowance in the budget for settlement with the Firemen's Union. Now, the dark side down below is that the anemic sales tax, and they revealed a very interesting stat, Jim. It's down from where it was 7 years ago. What do we do about that, Jim Benerofe? What would you do?
Well, I don't know. I'll have to see when some of the development that's planned takes place, and depending upon how fast it fills up, hopefully that gap will be reduced. Other than that, I don't see any way of covering it. I don't know exactly what else we could do. I think more people are buying stuff on the internet, and it's impacting us.
Yes, impact is the secret word this week. Impact. In fact, a sad story coming up. This story is sad. Mayor Roach released a statement on Wednesday confirming that 2 White Plains PBA officers are being investigated. The situation was exposed by BlackWestchester.com last Saturday in this story that's below the mayor's statement. It involved a story that quoted a veteran of 20 years of the White Plains Police Department telling about a loss of $250,000 from the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, allegedly stolen by 2 high-ranking PBA officers. Black Westchester named the officers and reported the PBA voted to not prosecute them if the money was returned in a month. WPCNR could get no one to go on the record on this allegation on Wednesday, and the mayor issued this statement up above. As you can see there, he confirms that he's asked the Westchester County District Attorney's Office for investigation, and he is also understanding that an active investigation is underway. So this is sad. People do, or it's just shocking, really. Now, last Friday was Vietnam Veterans Day at City Hall. This is the way the rotunda looked, and those easels are little cards with brief bios of Vietnam veterans who died in combat in Vietnam. One of them was a young man from White Plains. That's what the card looks like, Lawrence Desmore, and Lawrence Desmore died within the last 30 days of his tour. He was a buddy of one of the leading veterans working for Westchester County, and it's just sad, and you should really visit this rotunda and drink in the potential of these pictures, and that was never realized. The pictures were made with the names of the dead, and they made the dead come alive again with a melancholy contemplation of the dreams, contributions the veterans who died would have made. County Executive George Latimer made one of his most eloquent messages he has given about what we need to remember the Vietnam dead, why we need to remember about the Vietnam dead. It is 3 minutes that you need to hear. Here's the County Executive.
White Plains is the hometown of county government, so whenever the county government and the city government join to do something, it's usually very important. And I think to honor those men and women that fought in Vietnam and those that did not come home is a very important thing to do. This city has a very strong connection to the Revolutionary War through the Battle of White Plains. And at least twice a year, we're up at the Purdy House to remember George Washington and the men and women of that day and their sacrifice. And because it's still close enough to us, my father's generation, the World War II and Korea veterans have received year after year the kind of attention that they deserve. Less so Korea, but now more so as we start to realize that we're losing them every day. I had a grandfather who fought in World War I, and we're at the 100th anniversary this year of last year of the end of World War I. But Vietnam has a special place. My generation, because it was the war that occurred in and around my time frame. We all have our stories. I'm 8 years older than Tom. I went to selective service in November of 1971. Came up with the lottery, 112, and they didn't call up anybody in 1972 or 1973. Otherwise, my friends or older brothers were there, came back, and described the horror of what happened in Vietnam. And the horror of Vietnam is multiplied by the lack of respect that the Vietnam vets got when they came home. It's as simple as that. Tom said it, I've said it. Everybody understands now that 50 years later, almost 50 years later, that this was a group of veterans that were not treated the same way that the veterans from World War I and World War II were treated when they came back, or the returning Union Army from the Civil War, or the patriots that saved our country and made us an independent country. So we're in a constant position of having to remember, especially Vietnam, especially because of the lack of respect. We have to make sure that we take that extra step of respect. And this is a day to set that aside, but every day really is a day to set aside, because this country went on with its business while the men and women who fought in Vietnam were fighting in those jungles. And it's a hard remembrance for this nation. Hopefully we learn something from this, and as we've gone forward, every time we send men and women abroad, we put them in harm's way, that remember the sacrifice that they're making, the sacrifice that their family are making. The 191 people that died represented people who would still be with us today. They would be people who would be living amongst us, who would be enjoying their work life by now, would have had children and grandchildren. They would have been there for the great Yankee teams or the 1 or 2 Met teams that won. They would have been there to see all wonderful things happen, and they weren't there because they died in some rice paddy or in some offshore action in the South Asia Sea. So today, with the mayor, with the city of White Plains, the Westchester County government joins in this remembrance. May we never forget. We have our Director of Veteran Affairs, Ron Tochi, his immediate past Director of Veterans Affairs, Vito Pinto, here, and they have both, by the way that they fought and the way that they lived their lives, been a representative of exactly what it is like to come back from that experience and then be terrific citizens and help us all go forward. So I'm very grateful to Ron and to Vito both for the things that they've done. So Mayor, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you for this ceremony.
Thank you. And after their talks, Mayor Roach, Benjamin Boykin, and Ron Tochi, a Vietnam veteran, placed a wreath in front of the plaque on the rotunda of City Hall. There is the wreath placement, and this is that plaque coming up. And let's take a look at those names. They could have been with us today, but they were cut short. And one of the intriguing things of all the cards that you will view in the rotunda this week is the fact that they list the day they were killed. Very, very exacting, and it puts faces to the names. And moving on to other matters, this week on People to Be Heard, I interviewed all 3 Democratic candidates nominated for the 3 Common Council seats: incumbent Nadine Hunt Robinson, Jennifer Puja, and Victoria Presser. And you can see that interview on www.wpcommunitymedia.org. And on Wednesday, Kim Bresler had this announcement to make to me, to WPCNR, and she's challenging those 3 candidates. Here's what she said. I understand that you have filed for the primary already, and you're confident about that you will get on the ballot.
I am.
Right, so you filed early, right?
I feel like I filed on time.
Yes, filing on
Not
time.
early, not late.
With all
right on time.
With all the paperwork, right?
Yes.
Every paperwork you could think of, right? Well, great.
Lots of paperwork.
Very good. And I wanted to know, what is your strategy? What are you going to do from now on until June 25th, which is the date of the primary?
Knock on as many doors in White Plains.
Okay. Very good. So why don't you look at the camera so they will know who you are.
Hi, I'm Kat Bresler. I'm a public school teacher, and I'm running for Common Council because I care about the future of White Plains.
And thank you, Kat Bresler, for that exclusive. And you can see an interview with Ms. Bresler on Saturday evening at 7 p.m. on Pia to Be Heard, the Saturday edition, and you can see it from 8 p.m. on at www.wpcommunitymedia.org. So there's going to be a primary if Ms. Bresler's petitions are challenged by the Democratic, unless her petitions are challenged by the Democratic City Committee and she's denied the ballot. All four candidates really impress me too. And I think they will impress you too. See the interviews, see what you think. What do you think about this challenge?
Well, I've heard her speak a little bit. I don't really know her really well. She comes across very well, you know, and we'll have to see what happens.
Yes, as do all the three other candidates.
Yeah.
I think we have a great selection to choose from.
Yeah.
And now, I also want to give a tip to the White Plains Week fedora, to RKO Keith Baker, who slicks up and edits our extremely raw videos taken on location. Appreciate that, Keith and his staff. I also give a tip to a journalism change this week. We have a new journalism situation, and here is a picture of that website. The Westchester Business Journal and the Daily Voice debuted a new website shown here. It's called Daily Voice Plus. It's apparently a paid site after a certain number of articles, and it delivers Westchester Business Journal economics content, Daily Voice news and politics, and West Fair's WAG lifestyle stories. It's graphically more navigable than other news websites, and it combines the Daily Voice websites of 30 towns and cities in Westchester, which they say have 700,000 unique viewers. Seems to me to be taking dead aim at the Journal News web audience. The Kidney Association, Jim, announced this week they would pursue their appeal of the Lefkowitz decision, Judge Lefkowitz decision denying their challenge to the French-American School of New York approval. This, of course, is no surprise. Yeah. You're flabbergasted that they're appealing, or you are not flabbergasted.
No, I'm not flabbergasted.
No. But this will keep wending its way on in perhaps past for many years, I guess. Who knows? But be that as a way, that is, the courts can still do that. The State House in Albany approved Governor Cuomo's $178.5 billion budget. They've approved $2 billion more in school aid. Hopefully, White Plains gets some more. The legislature has also passed a law requiring internet marketers to pay sales taxes back to New York State if they were not doing so. Now, James, I was very curious about the idea of who is paying sales tax and who's not. Amazon is the #1 internet marketer in the country. But #1, way ahead of everybody else. It's not even close. But the Department of Taxation and Finance Press Office told me that this is what the law does, and I quote, "Every business collects New York sales tax is required to remit the tax to the state. The new law requires certain online marketplace providers to collect sales tax on behalf of the third parties selling taxable items on their sites. It applies to marketplace providers with at least $300,000 of annual sales into New York and 100 transactions made into New York annually. So that's the particulars. And as the press office at the Department of Taxation and Finance says, this is aimed at getting the big boys to collect the sales taxes from the providers that are suppliers to them. But as the city, though, did say that they do not know exactly how this is going to work and have not looked at, have not come to a conclusion about it. I think this may be overblown manna, you know? I mean, if you're supposed to be submitting sales tax, you probably already are. But we'll see how this works. I think it was 7 to 8 billion they thought they might be able to get, but we'll see. Now, the legislature also approved cash bail reform, except for serious felony charges. And they also approved congestion pricing. Now, you and I have been known to drive into Manhattan every once in a while. What do you think of the whole thing?
Well, it's hard to say without getting into the specific details of everything. I think that there is some necessity for doing it. I think it will create hardships, but I think that they've got to do something about traffic. And this seems to be the only way to do it.
Yeah. Someone raised a question with me the other day. What about driving back up past 60th? Is it a two-way toll or just going in? And we don't know.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, don't worry, folks. It's not going to take place for about another year, right? And they'll delay it because that's what the state always does. They delay it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't know yet what the toll is going to be on the Tappan Zee Bridge, do we? Still sitting around there. And but they did raise tolls unannounced, just as a matter of routine. I mean, I love these unannounced toll increases. Now, on Thursday morning, the Salvation Army of White Plains held its annual volunteer breakfast at the Crown Plaza. It was a packed affair with the mayor, the superintendent of schools, commissioner of public safety, David Chong, and many persons in the city that we all know. The Salvation Army honored Jeffrey T.C. on the left, accepting the award for White Plains Hospital for the hospital's support of the organization, Salvation Army, and Ellen Doherty, principal of White Plains High School, accepting on behalf of the high school for the hundreds of students who volunteer to the Salvation Army. Now, I wanted to ask you, the Salvation Army is one of the great unsung organizations. They're always there, they're always cheerful, professional, and just helping. And they always look so happy and dedicated. What is your impression of them? I think they're...
Well, I think that the Salvation Army is one of the greatest volunteer organizations in the country. And they do a lot of really good things. You know, what else can I say? I mean,
Yes.
it's a fantastic organization.
Right, and if anyone, and of course they're always looking for volunteers. So
Yeah.
if you want to help, feel good about yourself, the Salvation Army is the place to go, as is the Red Cross. A lot of volunteers. I know a friend of mine who handles a soup kitchen for them, and gets great satisfaction out of doing that. So just call them up and ask, do you need a volunteer? I'm sure either the Salvation Army, Red Cross, pleased to hear from you. And now, Thursday night, I attended Newsies, the new revival of the Disney musical at Westchester Broadway Theater, where the newsboys are something extra. The plight of striking newsboys who struck the New York world in 1899 is charming, inspiring. It's filled with dancers flying high, suspense, great costumes, and a beautiful reporter who takes charge, tap dances and types, and does a special on the handsome strike leader. And the lead lady is Mary Beth Donahue on the left, with Daniel Scott Walton to her immediate right, a really swashbuckling guy, and Patrick Toombs as Crutchy, and also the young man, Benjamin, I think I got that right, as Les. A lot of great looking cast, and it really is a great story about this strike that actually happened and brought Joseph Pulitzer down. In fact, since he was the person that was really trying to gouge the newsboys, it's surprising we won a prize. We named a prize after him. You know, it really struck me because I didn't know Pulitzer was that awful, but that's just really awful. Now, last week was the annual ice show at Ebersol Rink, and this is the great finale when all White Plains skating stars showcase their spins, jumps, and eagles. And there they are, and the big finale, just skating around, and these are all perhaps Olympic champions of the future because they really enjoy themselves. This is a big-time thing that they do every year, this show, and this year, other than a couple of the tots who slipped but got right back up again, it was just terrific because none of the soloists fell, and that is really to their credit. It's tough to do that. Another tough thing to do is play fast pitch softball when it's around 30 degrees out, but the White Plains Tigers did that, and this is the first pitch of their season. Here it is. Into the windmill, getting the sign, and it's blown away, ball one. But they went on to win that game 14-3. They've had a great start to the season, and I love opening days. That was my opening day. Now, we're coming down to the close of the show, and we have to really say that, do you feel windmills create cancer?
No.
No, I didn't think so either. I think that has to be perhaps the dumbest thing a certain person that we know said ever. So this is John Bailey for Jim Benerofe saying good night, Jim. Good night, Peter Katz, and good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week. News and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.